Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Annapolis Chamber Music Festival. My name is Rémy Taghavi, bassoonist and co-founder of ACMF. The events of this year obviously put a wrench in everyone's plans. After making the difficult decision to cancel our in-person festival, we immediately set about trying to find a way to continue to bring our musicians and the Annapolis community together. Though just a few months ago we could have never imagined our fifth season being completely online, we're incredibly heartened by the dedication and support that was shown by our musicians and especially you, our audience and supporters, in making this happen. After tonight's performance, we hope you'll join us for the rest of ACMF 2020, taking place tomorrow, Friday, August 14th, with the music of J.S. Bach, and Saturday, August 15th, with our collaboration concert, Variations on a Theme. Tonight's concert, Fine Wine and Finer Music, has become one of our favorite yearly traditions at ACMF. The program this year centers around music for solo instrument, with each work having been chosen by the musician performing it. We're so glad to again be partnering with Natalie Lightner of Bin 201, who selected 3 wonderful wines to accompany tonight's performance. Natalie will appear at various times during the concert, so you can follow along at home. I'd also like to let you know about our Zoom Q&A reception happening immediately after the concert. Just click the link below and that'll take you there as soon as we're done. Also, during the performance, feel free to use the chat function on YouTube to congratulate or applaud any musicians or ask any questions you'd like us to discuss during the Q&A. Lastly, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for watching us tonight. It means so much, and we can't wait to see you soon. I'd like to give a special dedication to Mark Conrad, ACMF's very first donor, and without whom none of this, virtual or in person, would be possible. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the show. Cheers!
Hi, I'm Natalie from Bin 201 Wine and Spirits. I'm here to talk about the wines you'll be tasting this evening. Bin 201 is super excited. This is our 5th year being able to partner with the Annapolis Chamber Music Festival, and we're doing it virtual this year. So the first wine that you'll be tasting is Louis Roederer. This is their Brut Premier Champagne. Louis Roederer is a champagne house that's been around for 2 centuries. They are one of the larger houses that are still remain independently and family owned. So this is their Brut Premier, so it's going to be dry, Brut, and it's made with the 3 grapes allowed in the Champagne region. So we have 40% Chardonnay, 40% Pinot Noir, and then 20% Pinot Meunier. It's a fuller bodied house style. Part of the blend is their reserve blend, which is aged in oak for several years, so that's going to add a little bit more body and super fun. And so that's champagne. Goes well with all the pieces, the French pieces specifically.
I love, and this happens so much at ACMF, when the musicians, we just get each other and we don't even really have to rehearse. It's just this moment where we put our instruments together and we start playing, and it just like happens. And it's that mix of course we're all trained, but of musical intuition, and it sort of like becomes this shared energy, and it's always so amazing. I love when that happens. Very much like my taste, which is not refined at all. They're just 2 pieces that I really like and I think are beautiful. And so I just put them together. Fauré, because it is one of these competition contest pieces, it really was meant to show off the flutist. But probably, if I were to make a guess, also challenge the flutist to be able to be free. They're just beautiful music that I was really happy to share with. I would just say one of my favorite parts in the Schubert are those moments where the sun kind of comes up for a second. So if you don't know the piece, you should listen carefully for those moments, because it's so quintessentially Schubert, and it always sort of makes me go tee-hee a little bit. I would not consider myself remotely a sommelier, but, you know, if I were to describe, also with the Schubert, it's pretty rich and deep. It's not the happiest sounding piece. There are some of those very characteristic of Schubert moments where it kind of, the sun comes up for a second and then all the clouds kind of come back and it gets out again. And, you know, the French piece, the Fauré, it's early French, you know, compared to Debussy. So it has a lighter quality, pretty and lyrical and flowery kind of feeling. Otherwise, it's just beautiful music that I'm happy to be sharing with you all.
solo music, so often we're searching for a way to make it seem bigger than it is. It can be very naked, a kind of naked feeling when you're playing a piece by yourself. And so my instinct is always to, find a really warm, really welcoming space from an acoustic standpoint that makes me sound sort of full and filling out a room. But with contemporary music, I think sometimes, especially this piece, you actually don't want that overly wet kind of sound world, because you want to hear the sort of inner workings of everything happening. In terms of the actual space that is conjured up by the piece, I think it's a very almost industrial kind of one. I have this strong image of like people hitting hammers against metal objects in some kind of factory work. And so I think, on one hand, it's extremely large and spacious, but on the other hand, it's extremely like tactile and happening on a really close level. This piece is definitely in what I would call a minimalist general kind of aesthetic, not because there's not that much musically going on, but because it has almost like a trance-like kind of effect. It's a vortex that draws you in and sort of puts you in a trance until the next thing happens that breaks you out of that trance. The first time I performed this piece was on a recital where I paired it with some solo Bach, and it's actually funny that we're doing a solo Bach concert the next day. It has really similar ideas at its core about counterpoint and dialogue between this driving, consistent and aggressive bass line and these very almost delicate repeated notes that I would say are almost like somebody swinging a tiny hammer or hitting a tiny bell. So this sense of dialogue and a sense of like two really clear identities happening at the same time. As part of my performance, I try to really isolate these two things. So despite being only one person, trying to create this sort of bifurcation of characters, and that I think is what also leads to the really almost jarring and shocking changes. Lots of classical musicians that come from the jazz world or any kind of other genre outside of the normal, what you'd call classical music, we're kind of always searching for those pieces that are a perfect hybrid between the two in a way that it can sort of represent our true musical identity. And it sometimes you find those, but I think it's really rare that there's a piece, that has a jazz influence that really scratches the itch. This piece, it's got a really almost like punk rock aesthetic driving, heavy metal bass line to it that really does it for me.
I like wine.
Absolutely love wine.
I do like wine.
Yes, I enjoy wine.
Some ABBA. I would put some ABBA on my party playlist.
I love the movie The Blues Brothers. My favorite song in the movie is actually Shake a Tail Feather with Ray Charles doing it.
Move your body, everybody.
My Boo by Usher and Alicia Keys.
I like to do everything with music. I feel like even when I'm not physically listening to music, I am listening to music.
I like to pair dancing with my music listening too.
You know, sometimes when I'm practicing and I don't really feel like practicing, I'll put on some sports. Baseball, football are good ones with lots of dead time.
So a nice vodka soda with a splash of grapefruit sometimes goes good with my practicing.
The connection with humanity, human emotion, experiences, memories, everything.
The spontaneity between colleagues.
Collaborating with other people and feeling their energy is what makes music exciting.
Playing with someone else and kind of, you know, you give your intention of what you want to do, and then they read it and they give their intention, and you have this back and forth. I think that's the most exciting part of playing music.
Your next wine is a neighboring region to Champagne. It's actually a Chablis, so it's part of Burgundy, but it's 60 miles north of the main Burgundy region. So this is Louis Michel Chablis. They've been around since the 19th century. And Chablis is famous for their commiserate soils, which are clay-based with a high lime content. Compared to the rest of the Burgundies, these are going to be a little bit fresher and brighter. You're going to get more acidity, a little bit more mineral. So you can look for those green apple tones.
I wanted to mention that actually when I think of pairing music with wine, this is actually the first piece I think of, because when I was studying it with my teacher, I remember him telling me, imagine you're having a glass of wine and you're in a villa on like kind of the beach of Andalusia, on the shores of Andalusia. And he was basically just wanting me to loosen up a bit. And at that age, I'd never had a glass of wine. I wasn't old enough to drink, but I could imagine what he was saying. The title itself, Humoresque, it brings up, it's referring to humor. I mean, not like comedic, laughing out loud kind of humor, but it's referring to like a good nature, like light, humorous piece. I tend to not play too dramatically, and it has a very famous rhythm to it. If anyone's into poetry, like iambic pentameter kind of, it's like dum da dum da dum da dum, and the way you kind of play and articulate that can bring out a lot in terms of how serious you want to make it, or how kind of heavy or light. And I try to play it a little bit on the lighter side. I mean, there's definitely a hindrance because you cannot be as flexible. Like you're missing that spontaneity you get when you play with an actual person. They can feel and react to what you're doing, and so you have a lot more freedom in that way. But as you get used to kind of like how the accompaniment is being played, you can play around it, and you start kind of your interpretation and the way you play it. You can put in yourself into it. It's not like you're super restricted. For the Romanza Andaluza, I mean, the title itself, it tells you quite a bit. It's Romanza, like a romance, something romantic. And Andaluza, which is referring to Andalusia, it's a region in Spain, like a light medium texture, something smooth. It's a pretty like nicely flowing piece. For the Humoresque, I would say, like, for the tasting notes, it's something on the lighter side. It's not a heavy piece. Everything is kind of subtler and more nuanced. Just me personally, something with like a floral aroma, like kind of a citrusy flavor.
wine you'll be tasting is Pinot Noir from St. Innocent's Freedom Hill Vineyard. This is in the Willamette Valley. Freedom Hill Vineyard is further west than a lot of the Willamette Valley vineyards, and so they get the first afternoon breezes from the Pacific Ocean, helping to cool the grapes down and retain that acidity. They're also organic and biodynamically farmed. So I hope you guys enjoy the music, and I'm looking forward to tuning in as well. Hope to see you live next year.
I basically judge or I'm drawn to music and new music in the same way that I would be drawn to a traditional or old music, right? Right off the bat, how does it make you feel, right? Do you have some sort of emotional attachment to whatever you're hearing or seeing? But also, I just believe that classical music is an open-ended canon, and the creation and promotion of new work is crucial to the continued evolution of the art form. My first flute teacher when I was a kid had like yearly recitals at the end of the year, and she would always play something on the recital, whether it was like a fun French flute duet with one of the older students or just a solo piece she was working on. And one year she played a piece which now has become sort of part of my repertoire that I like to present. She played this piece by Robert Aitken called Icicle. And it was the first time I really saw live someone playing a piece of just solo flute music that was written maybe 20 years before that. And it just had a bunch of extended techniques. And I heard the flute used just as a vessel, you know, with sort of infinite possibilities of sounds and ways to play. And I think that from that moment had always been really inspiring. You know, since this quarantine, I've been trying to figure out many ways to expand my musical life, and playing with electronics and pre-recorded tracks, or trying to multi-layer my own playing. Like, that's been a really crucial part of getting through this crazy quarantine. And Natalie is a very good friend of mine. And it's always really lovely to play music by friends because you have an extra bond with the piece, I think, because you care about the composer separate from the music as well as caring about the music. And so I was really excited to get to know this piece. I've been thinking a lot about also being a woman and an artist who has spent my entire life butting heads with stereotypes and expectations of what a female flute player looks like, both in appearance and also musical aesthetic. And so I want to strive to create a home for artists who have also been othered potentially by their music community. And so by collaborating with female identifying artists and artists of color, as well as trying to celebrate the underrepresented history of artists of color in classical music, I hope to be a part of changing the expectation of what a classical musician looks like. And this representation, I think, is the next step in our continued evolution as musicians and members of a larger community. I think that there are many layers of a variety of flavors that may, you know, hit your palate at different times during the tasting.
Hi, my name is Mark Conrad, and I'm one of the original sponsors of the Annapolis Chamber Music Festival. I first met Zach Hoban through connections at Oberlin Conservatory back in 2008. I don't think either of us could have imagined at that time that 12 years later we would still be so closely involved in this remarkable thing called the ACMF. That first year of the festival, we only had two hosts, me and my good friend Elena, who many of you also know. We each hosted 5 musicians in our homes, and it was glorious chaos and musical pandemonium for a week and a half. Since that time, we've grown and added wonderful new host families. But the sheer joy of having these energetic, young musicians around, and the gift of luxuriating in the phenomenal music they make, has never diminished. Every year, I impatiently await the first or second week of August, when I know that I can once again enjoy chamber music with the Annapolis community that has grown up around this festival. August in Annapolis can be hot and sleepy, and the ACMF provides a welcome source of refreshment and energy for Annapolitans of all musical experiences. In this crazy pandemic year, it's wonderfully consoling to have these streaming concerts to remind us that ACMF is still alive, ACMF still needs us, and ACMF will be back next year. We look forward to seeing you in person then. Thank you.
Yeah, I've always tried to include, whenever I can, Brazilian music in concerts that I do, or every opportunity that I have. Like a good example of that is in one of the tours that we did with the New York Symphonic Ensemble, and I found out this underground bar in Tokyo where they would have random Shoto jam sessions, like a random tiny little bar, and then I went there and jammed with a bunch of Japanese people on Brazilian music, and it was fantastic. A couple of years ago, I came across this album when I was organizing my music library, and then I was listening to it, and it was kind of like a world music overview kind of album with recordings of random instruments and voices from different parts of the world, like shakuhachi, taiko. It was how come I know all these tracks almost by memory? Where does this come from? And then I confronted my mom about it. Then she said oh yes, this album is actually, it was a tape that came with a book that I played for you a lot when you were growing up, because I wanted you to grow up without any musical prejudices. A little later, I guess in my teenage years, I played a lot of choro, which is basically the Brazilian version of jazz, with similar structure. They're a form that repeats and allows for improvisation and things like that. So Marco Salles was a contemporary of Villa-Lobos. He lived around the same time, and he was one of the few Brazilian musicians who had, at that time, the opportunity to study abroad. This Caprice is from a book that he wrote at around 1908, and he came from the very northern part of Brazil, close to the Amazon, and in that region of Brazil, they are super into these mythical folk types of figures and things like that. So lots of his music have titles that evoke those things and melodies that are very folk-like. And this Caprice has this kind of melodic vibe that is, from kind of the central region of Brazil. I would describe it as citrusy. I feel a lot of the piece is very citrusy. It also, I would also describe it as having a surprising finish. I don't even know if that is something that happens in wine description. Yeah, it's something that as you're listening to it, you may expect something to result from what you heard before, and then it turns out that it's something else at the end.